So you're a dietitian. I'm curious, how long have you been working in that field? And maybe you can tell a little bit, like, how did your personal journey lead you into that work?
Yeah, so I launched my practice in 2020, but I've been a student of physiology, really functional medicine for well over a decade. And my journey on this path started kind of from like a shadowy aspect. I struggled with an eating disorder for the majority of my life, and I became interested in the field of nutrition from the angle of like wanting to learn how to hack my body essentially so that I could be thin and happy and perfect and all that crap.
Mm,
And then I ended up falling in love with the field of nutrition and through the journey like academically and through my own personal journey so much has transformed and expanded, and I still very much love the field, but there's a whole like underbelly of my work that I did not learn in school.
okay. And what kind of things did you learn outside of school?
Well, so the name of my practice is the root cause method. And I really believe that the root cause of many, many illnesses is actually trauma and the
Mhm.
various manifestations of that in the body and the ways in which we try to regulate our super dysregulated systems and how that leads to more and more, dysregulation and imbalance and inflammation and illness ultimately. And so a lot of my work is deeply trauma informed, and the tools and the kind of modalities that I use are, again, not something I learned in my conventional education, but I kind of blend a lot of things together.
Interesting. So yeah, a lot of people, we have a lot of like healing, different modalities and stuff on the podcast. And so the word trauma comes up a lot and like how trauma gets stored in the body.
Mm.
Maybe we can like start off by like putting a definition on trauma, and then proceed from there and maybe like explain more about the root cause method.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, trauma can look so many ways. It can manifest as many things as well, but I really believe, really simply, that it's like when the system is overwhelmed, when there's an event that is overwhelming to the system, that and we aren't. So it's the event, and then it's also what happens in the wake of trauma. So if there was a lack of like nurturance or efficacious like emotional support and comforting and console and all those kinds of things, like in the aftermath, that in and of itself is like another layer of trauma where roots grow, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, and one of the sort of things that emerges for me, like I'm kind of like building the definition like with each guest and like I'm learning from everyone as I go. But one of the things that you said that kind of builds on the definition that I've been creating is like when something happens and it's more than the nervous system can handle, then
Yeah.
it overflows from the nervous system and actually somehow gets stored in the body, which
Yes.
is like, I'm no doctor, but like doctor therapists will tell you like, yeah, that's how it works. But to me, it's a little bit crazy because like I never heard about any of that really until like I was doing this podcast and talking to like a lot of wellness people and healing people and
Right.
psychedelic people. Um, so so it's just wild to me that I never heard that until like recently in my life. You would think they would be teaching this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It's what gets stored in the body. And then I think one of the other like really critical elements of trauma are the decisions that we make about ourselves in response to what we go through. So it's like those are like the threads, those are the tendrils of like, deciding unconsciously, of course, that maybe I'm unworthy of love, or I deserved that kind of treatment I received, or I don't matter, or these core wounds and these core decisions that we make about ourselves in childhood that really plague us throughout the rest of our lives unless we address them.
hmm. So can you tell us more about like what is the root cause method?
Yeah. So the root cause method, it started as a functional nutrition private practice, where I created this kind of methodology that was designed to identify imbalances in the body and then restore or optimize as naturally as possible. But I knew I would get into the psychedelic space because that is what changed my life. And so while I definitely still support the physiology through various, taking assays of sorts, right? GI maps or the Dutch test or blood chemistry analysis, things like that. I'm understanding the physiology depending on what the client is presenting with, creating a very tailored, unique protocol really for their unique physiology, but then diving so much deeper into like why the physiology got to that state. So much of my work is really about the psychology of eating and how trauma shapes our relationship to food, to body, to health, but really ultimately to self. It's like how
Hmm.
you eat, how you care for yourself or not is a representation of your relationship with self. And so I use psychedelics now in my work and my practice with clients to transform health by really deeply repairing the relationship to self. And then systemically everything improves.
Fascinating. I love that. You mentioned that psychedelics, you knew that you would eventually bring them into your practice, because they really changed your life. Can you tell us what's the story there?
Oh God, here we go. Yeah, as I mentioned, I had an eating disorder, it's really like, this is the thing I want to clarify first. I don't work with clients with acute eating disorders, like anorexia nervosa or someone in like an acute phase with bulimia nervosa. Like they deserve a different type of care, maybe like acute care. Who I work with my client is really people that have disordered eating. So there's an emotional dynamic with food. There's this feeling of out of control. They may be overweight. They may not be overweight. It's just like impeding in their quality of life, in their full self-expression, in their freedom, in their yeah, the juiciness of life. And it could be they're restricting and they have all this like rigidity around food, or it could be they overindulge and they can't seem to like temper and have freedom around food. It can look so many different ways.
Hmm.
So I had all of those things over the course of my life. Beginning at the age of 3 years old is when I started using food emotionally. And so I had no idea, I lacked a reference point of life prior to that pattern coming online. So I didn't have like a contrast. And so this was like the only tool I had access to in all moments, in trigger, in overwhelm, in fear, in celebration, in joy, in pleasure. Like this was like my my thing, my world, my happy place, if you will. It wasn't so happy. And then it obviously escalated and turned into a full-blown eating disorder in my teens and 20s, where I checked myself into a recovery center for bulimia and binge eating disorder when I was 22 years old. And it felt very, very out of control, but I had no idea why.
Hmm.
And I was depressed, I was isolated, I was deeply ashamed. I didn't have friends. It was really a challenging experience, but I was always seeking. I didn't understand why other people were living their lives and joyfully and going off to college and with friends and loving relationships, and so I was seeking. And I tried various modalities like Reiki and past life regression and therapy forever and all these kinds of things, until I heard a Tim Ferriss podcast talking about the healing benefits of ayahuasca with one of his friends who had an eating disorder, and after the ceremony went into full-blown remission. And
Wow.
everything in my being was like, holy shit, like this is the way out. I didn't know there was something in my system. I didn't know what it was, but I knew there was something in there. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
at that time I was still in school and I didn't have cool friends who took mushrooms on the weekend, and so I just became like obsessed with consuming the literature and just would read studies and listen to interviews and read books and all the things all around psychedelics. And I was so lit up by like how incredibly expansive and transformational these allies, these tools, these substances seemed to be. And I went on this like hunt of like trying to infiltrate this world, trying to get access. And then finally, like 2 years later, I sat in my first women's circle, and it was really profound. And the medicine was sassafras and kanna. It was really, really beautiful. But it didn't seem to like fix me, because I was still in the mindset of like I needed to be fixed. And I thought this was gonna just, I went on a big binge thinking like this is my last one, gotta get it in. Like had this ceremony and like nothing had happened. I was really cued into like healing instead of my relationship with food, my relationship with the feminine, which is his own portal.
Hmm.
But I was seeking like some big transformational experience. And so ayahuasca came into my field. And in the summer of 2020, I sat, and what was revealed to me was that I was molested between the ages of 3 and 5 years old and had
Oh my God.
zero recollection for 30
Wow.
years.
Wow.
And in that moment, despite it not being like re-traumatizing, it was bizarre and wild, and also was very like I knew in that moment that the truth of it. um, I was also flooded with just the most profound levels of self-compassion I had ever experienced, for myself. And
Wow.
everything in my life made sense. Like the degree of self-hatred, the degree of dissociation and disembodiment, and the objectification of my own body, and all this world that I had been living in without understanding why, it made sense to me. And it
Oh my
just
God.
launched me on this path of like, these are accessible to everyone, and this is the root cause. This is why I was overweight. This is why this was what was perpetuating my relationship with food, why I couldn't heal my gut or my thyroid or all of these, systems that were imbalanced in my physiology. This was the root of it all.
Wow. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Um, and so where did you take it from there? Like you discovered all that in ceremony, and then how do you integrate that? And by the way, I also want to add that's really amazing that you mentioned that you were able to uncover all this trauma, but also meet yourself with a great deal of compassion. Because as you were telling me the story, I was kind of like, oh my God, like some people maybe they would be fearful that they could be re-traumatized, or like
Yeah.
kind of bring that up in a very very painful way. But
Yeah.
that's amazing that you were able to meet yourself with compassion.
Yeah, thank you. It seemed almost like it just unfolded. It wasn't like a cognitive, okay, now is the time for compassion. It was just like, holy shit, this 3-year-old, like, oh my, like my heart broke open for myself, which was such medicine, in and of itself. But it was destabilizing in a way. Everything that I knew, everything that I thought I knew really was starting to come into question. And I went into solitude for 2 years.
Whoa.
And
After the
yeah,
ceremony.
yeah, plunged into a very sacred chrysalis of totally decomposing into goo. And
A
and in that
sacred
space,
chrysalis, I like that.
yeah, like really just meeting myself in the depth of all of it that I had not been able to feel for 3 decades. And learning how to create the safety for myself to tap into these intense feelings, and to nurture myself in these vulnerable spaces. And I also just started like harvesting gems down there. Like I just started getting wisdom and access to these understandings and teachings and lessons and learnings, and it became so clear to me that I was supposed to share these with other people. And so I had already started my practice, and it was more clinical at that time. And it has slowly morphed into way more psychospiritual, way more energetic, way more trauma informed. And like, yes, I'll support the physiology because I know how important that is, but like, I'm bored with that, to be quite honest. Like, I'm bringing
Interesting.
people onto my team that are really like awesome at that, and want to keep doing that and get deeper in that, because I have like this bird's eye view of the whole situation, and know that if you just focus on gut health, like you're missing the mark. Like it's just,
It's a
yeah,
more holistic
yeah,
the system is a whole system.
it's a whole system.
So I'm curious, could you tell me like a little bit, like compare and contrast a little bit, like what was the early sort of like very clinical, what did it look like in your practice when it was just very clinical versus what it looks like now?
Oh yeah, cool. So it was a package of 5 sessions, and the first session was like a thorough intake, which I still do. And then there was the analysis of data. So either I'm looking at a stool sample or blood chemistry, whatever. I'm analyzing a set of data, and then I'm creating a specific protocol depending on the data that I'm looking at. And then in the second call, I'm presenting the findings, the results, but I'm also presenting the protocol of like, here's the intervention, here's what I found, and according to like this is the game plan. Here's what we're gonna do. So it's super comprehensive in terms of dietary structure, which is unique again to like the person's preferences, lifestyle, and also a condition in the body. here's a supplement kind of intervention, here are lifestyle modifications, like here's this essentially like 11 or 12 page document full of value that you can use ongoingly. But it's also like supportive for the intervention right now and sustainable progress. So
Mm.
that's session two. And then session three, oh, this is so funny. I used to take them, I used to do like a pantry, like a kitchen pantry.
You like raid, you'd go there and like raid the pantry and
Well,
like,
it was
this is
all
gone.
virtual. Yeah, but they would
Okay.
take me through FaceTime and like they would open there. And so we talk about the quality of animal protein. We talk about the oils they're using to cook with. We're talking about like what's in your freezer, your pantry, your fridge.
Hmm.
And so it's very education heavy. I'm equipping those, teaching them like
What is,
why.
what is something that you always see that you're like, get rid of that right away?
Oh my God, like canola oil, like
Hmm.
vegetable oils, even like, oh, margarine, like the Smart Balance margarine, those kinds of things. I'm like, eat the grass-fed butter, like
Hmm.
eat the ghee, have the good quality oils in there, get out the rest of the vegetable
What do
oil.
you do if someone shows their pantry and there's like a box of like lollipops in there?
We talk about it.
What would you have to say about that?
Let's talk about it. It's so complex because it's like it's such a delicate thing. Like when someone wanted to take the food away from me when I was deeply engaging in these things, it's like it was my security blanket. It was like that was the only tool I had. So like, do not. It's threatening
You'd
if
be very
someone's just
upset
like,
about that. If someone's
yeah,
like throw those away, you'd be like, hey,
yeah.
that's, you'd be very upset about that.
Yeah, it's not like everyone, ChatGPT, a million dietitians or nutritionists, they can all tell you what to eat and what not to eat. That's easy. But to break down what's driving our behavior with food, that's super nuanced. It's super complex. It's like,
Hmm.
what's the need for holding on to these? Why are you having them like at your disposal? What is it offering you? How can you get this elsewhere? Like, how can you create that feeling for yourself in a way that has nothing to do with food? Like, it's juicy. I love that stuff.
Yeah. And by the way, lollipops are not even food. So,
Right. They're not even
so
close.
I don't know why that question just popped into my head. I'm just like curious what's in people's pantries. I don't have any lollipops here, by the way, but
I wouldn't judge you if you did. Don't worry.
thank you. Thank you. So, okay, so you raid the pantry and you're saying like one of the main things that people need to get rid of right away would be like canola oils.
Yeah, seed oils, also like conventional animal protein, like,
Oh, really?
Purdue chicken and like conventional animal protein. Like if there's one thing that I spend good money on, it's the quality of my food. Yeah. Like it's
So by conventional animal protein, you mean like I just go up to like Safeway, whatever, I buy a pack of chicken.
yeah.
You're saying no to that because what it's like packed with like hormones and
Hormones and
antibiotics.
steroids and antibiotics and all of the things, the quality of life of those animals is atrocious. It's awful. And so you're ingesting not only the chemicals that they've been injected with, but also like the energetic of that, the quality of that life
The
you're
misery.
consuming. Yeah, misery. The factory farmed animals is what I would be like, I am quite strict up about. And so, if it's feasible financially, I would really, really invite and encourage like wild caught. You can still get it at a grocery store, but like free range, grass fed, grass finished. Like, we're fortunate. I live in Austin, Texas. So we're fortunate to buy our meat from the farmer's market every week. And we know the
Nice.
farmers and like we know that they're happy cows and like they, they're not like in a
Beautiful.
mill. And it absolutely influences everything in the physiology, but also energetically and emotionally.
For the most part, you're not telling people to steer away from animal protein, are you?
Definitely not. I'm a big protein fan. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I am too. That's interesting that you say definitely not.
Yeah. Oh my
Can
God.
you talk a little bit more about that? Like why is it like definitely not?
Well, so like so muscle is metabolically active tissue. Muscle way much more than fat. Fat is not really metabolically active, not nearly as much as protein. And so the higher quality of muscle we have in our body equals the higher quality of health we have overall.
You
You
mean
know,
like our own, like our muscles? Like
yeah, the
more.
density, the strength, the resilience, the capacity to repair, the quality of the tissue, like all of this is synonymous to our overall health, our
This
bone health, our endocrine health, everything.
This is why they say as people age, like getting even into senior years, you should still do some like light
Yeah,
weightlifting.
sarcopenia. Sarcopenia is like the degradation of muscle starting at age 30. I mean, we're
Mm.
already in that state. And so we have to like counteract that. We have to eat high quality protein that creates density in the muscle. And we have to train, resistance train, walk on like with resistance and incline, like practice like squatting, like make those core muscles strong, keep them strong throughout the course of our lives. It's like, it's so vitally important for every age group, every demographic.
We're really made to move, you know.
Yes.
Otherwise, we would probably be plants.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So, amazing. So, what is something I'm curious while we're on the topic of what people should cut? What is something that you recommend people should add that you don't see? Do you ever see something lacking in someone's pantry that you're like, this is something we should incorporate in more people's pantries?
Well, animal meat, probably animal protein wouldn't be in a pantry, but like
Right, right,
I
in the kitchen.
see
Yeah.
it. I mean, we already it's kind of redundant, but like I see, especially in women, like they think like one meal with protein in it a day is like sufficient, and it's actually like severely inadequate.
Oh,
My
really?
consumption is like 35 grams of protein, like four or five times a day. Like I'm eating high amounts of protein, and I also think that it's subjective, right? There's no one size fits all. So like really check in with your own body and see how you feel around this. But like I don't eat grains. I don't eat starchy carbohydrates except maybe like once or twice a week within the forms of like potato.
Hmm.
I'm not a marathon runner. I am active, but my body just feels really good without the grains. Not to mention the grains are like usually doused with pesticides and herbicides that are
Glyphosate.
carcinogenic. Yeah, exactly. And so people are like with their granolas and their cereals and their oatmeals thinking that they're like heart healthy because that's the propaganda. And like, no, they're just not.
I did appreciate what you said about like check in with your body though. You're like, this
Yeah.
is what works for me. I don't really do grains. Maybe you need a little bit of grains.
Yeah. Yeah.
I appreciate that. Like, you know, each person probably needs their own thing. Out of curiosity, what does like a typical day look like for you? Like, is it like three meals and like what's on the plate?
It's four meals usually, so three meals and a snack.
Mhm.
Breakfast is always high protein, so I put turkey slices with scrambled eggs, and an apple with a cup of coffee. That's my breakfast. And then lunch is we get these really amazing chicken sausages from the farmers market. So they're like free
Mhm.
range chicken. They're not, factory farmed, all the things. And so I have a couple of those with whatever else. Like I eat a lot of meat and I eat fruit, meat and
Mhm.
fruit and honey and good fats, pickles, avocado, coconut, olives, those kinds of things. And so I'll just kind of make something like that for lunch. And then I usually train. I usually go to the gym in the afternoon. So I'll have a protein shake when I come home, and my protein powder is like desiccated organs. People are gonna think I'm disgusting. Yeah, it's like it's
You like make your own protein powder?
definitely not. There are protein powders on
You
the
wait,
market now.
you don't desiccate your own organs?
No, no, I do not. But there's some, they taste kind of good. Like yeah, they're good. They're coming on the market now because like a lot of people have issues with whey. And so it's whey free, it's like dairy free, and it's just like it's organs with chocolate
Wow. Is
flavor.
there a certain brand or it's not out yet or
Yeah, Noble Protein is what I use to just to plug them. Because I
cool?
don't know of anybody else, and that's what I use, and they're really clean. And then dinner is always like it's usually last night we had lamb burgers, usually like grass-fed beef, different cuts of that. Sometimes fish, yeah, it's beef usually, chicken.
And
Um,
anything on the side, or are you just eating beef for dinner?
yeah, no, sometimes potatoes. Sometimes potatoes. I don't. So this is really interesting. And this is something I'm just trying as of recently. I've been on this kind of experimenting. I'm a guinea pig. I take myself through everything. Like I just like to experiment. And so I'm trying this protocol, which is anti everything I learned in school.
Mm.
Everything I learned in school is like fiber, all the colors of the rainbow, da 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 da. Well, I had like chronic GI issues and I did all the stuff and did all the protocols. I help people heal their guts all day, every day. And I was dealing with this thing. And so I started to learn more about like animal-based diets and how plants have these like phytotoxins in them. They can't move like you referenced earlier. So they have these kind of built-in defenses that are, phytates and like all these different things to ward off predators essentially. And when I cut fiber out of my diet, my gut has never felt better.
Wow.
It's wild. I get fiber from fruit. I eat a lot of fruit.
Hmm.
I always eat fruit after the meat. The myth that it will like rot in your stomach, it's bullshit. It's not true. But
Oh
I
my
do
God.
that to regulate my blood sugar levels. So like if I have fruit first, the glucose and the fructose will spike, glucose and insulin levels. And so if there's contents in your stomach, such as like animal protein, where it's like high protein and good fat, it will slow down the absorption of glucose into the bloodstream. So you'll kind of maintain your sugar levels, which is ideal. But I'm getting micronutrients and fiber and all these beautiful antioxidants through the fruit. And the fiber was just pissing off my stomach
Hmm.
a lot. And now my stomach feels great. And so
You know,
I'm experimenting.
I love the experimentation. I also love what you said about fruit because I do over the kind of course of this journey, I've made a lot of friends and they're like they always want to tell you things and help you, you know. But I've
Yes.
had a couple people that are like, "Hey, you don't why are you eating not your fruit first? And
I know.
if you don't eat your fruit first, then all the rest of your meals in the queue and the fruit's gonna ferment in your
Not true.
system."
Not true.
Yeah, I always got annoyed with that because I'm like, I just feel like having my fruit after the rest of my food.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the way to describe this, the way because since I'm very interested in like the dietitian approach to what I'm going to tell you. My blood sugar will like I'll crash very rapidly. Like I'll get very fatigued, really. Or even say if I eat too much sugar, I will also crash.
That makes
Like I
sense.
like I ate like bunch of I was with a some friends. We were on a road trip and I stopped and got like some ice cream bars. And they're like, if you eat two ice creams, you're gonna be like wired, man. You're gonna have like so much sugar you're just going to want to relax in the car. And for me, actually, the opposite happened where I ate the ice cream, then I crashed. I became really like tired and almost like lethargic. I felt crappy.
Hmm.
Like I
Hmm.
had no blood, like my blood sugar went down.
That's
And
true.
so I think what's happening, and obviously I'm not a doctor, but I think I eat the sugar and especially the really nasty sugar. It's like gas station ice cream thing. Um, and then my metabolism and insulin just like attacks all the sugar that's in my system and then it goes too low.
Well, there's total truth to that. I mean, insulin's job is to get sugar out of the bloodstream, and so it puts it inside the cell. And so your sugar will spike really high, and because the body has protective mechanisms in place, that one of them being insulin, to prevent the sugar blood sugar levels from getting like dangerously high, insulin will come and like get the sugar out of the bloodstream, and it will go inside the cell, and inside the cell it will do its thing, will create and store energy in the form of ATP, or really in the form of body fat. But when the sugar is out of the bloodstream and into the cell, your sugar levels drop again. And so like it's the same with like Thanksgiving dinner where you're like wired for a second and then you have to take a nap. It's like because now your blood sugar levels are so low because all of it is now inside the cell. So it's true.
Okay, interesting.
It's
I
kind of like
also
reactive hypoglycemia. It's like it goes so high and then the sugar gets out and then it goes really, really low. So it's not ideal.
I know someone that has had this experience when they drink ayahuasca,
Mm.
with they feel like the blood sugar is getting really low. Do you have any thoughts on that, or is it just like
I mean, they're in a fasted state when they're consuming that medicine. So there's probably truth to the fact that, their blood sugar levels are lower than normal if they weren't fasted. But also ayahuasca can be very dehydrating. We're
right?
purging, and mineral depletion and electrolyte imbalance are definitely things to be concerned with. Um,
Good point.
when I sit with medicines like that, I do take minerals with me.
You take them like you have it like with you like during the ceremony,
No, because I
or
think
like
it can interfere. I know like sodium can kind of like too high salt can like maybe block like visuals or something like that. I've heard on Dieta, but I'll
mhm.
take them like in between ceremony and or just like electrolyte packets or something like that.
Yeah, got you. Smart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so we were talking about
My old program.
Yes, your old program.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll just finish up. Session number 4 was more like psychology of eating. This was the
Mm.
session where I really started to like sink my teeth into like what I'm really doing now and give myself an opportunity to play and explore and kind of figure out what questions were really catalytic for opening people to something deeper.
Mhm.
And so we would talk about what shaped their relationship with food, and we'd always find ourselves talking about, childhood and what were the kinds of things that happened and when did they start using food to self-soothe and all of that kind of stuff. And obviously you can only do so much in a matter of an hour, but
Mhm.
it plants seeds and it kind of like brings things to the surface. And then yeah, session 5 was really like sustained progress. So usually it was a continuation of session 4, honestly, because people really were hungry for this information and this exploration.
That's what I was
Um,
gonna say. I bet people really
yeah.
like session 4.
Yeah, they did. They
Yeah.
did. And that became the basis of my work now. Now I have a program called The Garden. I have two main offerings. One is called The Garden, which is a 13-week deep dive one-on-one with me. So in the beginning, I'm supporting the body, kind of like I mentioned before, but we're spending the majority of that experience diving deep into like what's driving their behavior, what is the foundation of their relationship to self. Because if they're using food to self-soothe in that way, it's another form of self-abandonment. It's another form of dissociation. They're just like, I don't want to feel that. I'm going to check out. I'm going to distract myself. I'm going to maybe punish myself, or it can look so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately that ability to stay with the self is where we land at the end. But I use ketamine in my practice
Oh, really?
3 times over the course of the 13 weeks on weeks 5, 7, and 9. So we're in the subconscious realms. We're in there.
Do you have to be a doctor to work with that medicine?
So I don't prescribe. They have a prescription from a doctor, so everything is above ground. I'm
Hmm.
just holding space. I'm guiding the experience. So like let's say they go to an at-home ketamine company like Mind Bloom or Joyous or whatever, they get their prescription and they opt in for a self-guided experience. Well, so they're self-guided according to Joyous and they've gone through their intake process and all the things, but I'm guiding the experience. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And
That's amazing. I've
it's been remarkable.
never, you're the first person I've talked to that kind of has the, like, you're not a doctor, but you are a dietitian, and but they can get the medicine from somewhere else, and then you guys can work together.
Yeah. And I have referrals. I have relationships with many of these companies. And so I'll send them my clients, or I'll send them, if there's a physician in their state and I have a personal relationship with them, I'll send them directly to that physician. And so, yeah, it's been the kind of creative, kind of clunky, but also works really well way that we do this because I can't prescribe. And the transformations that I've witnessed are remarkable, absolutely
Really? I was going
remarkable.
to ask, I was going to say, what kind of results have you seen?
Oh my gosh. I mean, the client that comes to my mind right now is a male, actually. And most of my clients are women. I would say 85% of my clients are women, but I do work with some amazing men. And this client was clinically obese and had gastric bypass surgery and began to gain the weight back and was really, really frustrated with himself as a father to two beautiful children, lost his wife to cancer, was just in the struggle. And this man not only has his physiology transformed, but he's no longer using food in that way at all. He's now on the medicine path, like, which doesn't
Oh,
happen with all my
beautiful.
clients. Yeah. And his relationship with himself is so radically different. His relationship, how his ability to father his children, but also his ability to mother himself and his children. This is like,
Excuse
bless
me.
you, this
Thank you.
relationship with food is so, it's so complex, but it's so related to our fragmented relationship with our mothers, how we
Really?
lacked nurturance, how we lacked comfort and soothing, and that warm gooey. Like that's why we turn to food instead of like cocaine. Like it's like it's that particular flavor we seek. And that's what I have found. The vast majority, 98% of my clients have mother wounding.
Mm.
And
Wow.
so this particular client had a fragmented relationship with his mother. And when he lost his wife, he, through our work, learned how to mother himself, but also to be able to show up for his children in that nurturing way. And yeah, I see the one of the women who completed the garden recently lost over 40 pounds, and it's not because she was on a diet. It's because she learned how to hold herself and to stop using food to push down her emotional experience. And that weight
Mm.
loss happens easily.
Yeah, it happens easy when you get to the root of
Exactly.
things.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Um, I didn't know that you were working with ketamine. Have you tried ketamine as well?
Of course.
Yeah, okay. Of
Only
course.
therapeutically though. Like I
Yeah.
tried it once recreationally and I was like, I did not. I just have such an affinity. I have such like a reverence for that medicine, even though it's synthetic. It has healed my brain from complex trauma, unlike any other substance. That has been the medicine I've sat. That and cannabis have been the medicines I've sat with most, often in combination, which is profound, um,
Interesting.
profound. And yeah, it has helped heal my brain
Wow.
massively. And that is it's I love ketamine for so many reasons. I think that it's a beautiful entry point for the psychedelic world because it is non-threatening. It's very gentle. And so the people that have experienced trauma or maybe suspicious of trauma, and may go into a ceremony with mushrooms or ayahuasca with a lot of contraction in their nervous system, a lot of fear, ketamine is so gentle that I've been able to like just extrapolate like deep stuff because
Mm,
my system is so open. And because of
mhm.
like the partial removal, like it's a sub-anesthetic dissociative. So you're partially removed from the experience. You can be with the fear, you can explore the fear, you can process the fear, but you're not taken by the fear. You're not hijacked by the fear. It
Amazing.
expands our capacity of being with discomfort in real time. And then in our integration work, we nurture the hell out of that. And that's what changes
Yeah. I,
everything.
and that seems to be one of the things that people really need is to sit with whatever it is that
Yes.
the feelings that they have been holding in and not actually feeling. They really just need to, as much as
Yeah.
possible, self-compassionately sit with that and just allow yourself to fully feel it to then release
It's
it.
the best kept weight loss secret in the world is just to feel your feelings.
To feel
But
your feelings.
yeah, but the caveat is like we have to create safety within ourselves first. When
Hmm.
we were children and we were going through these big things, it didn't feel safe to feel. That's why we dissociated. That's why that pattern is still online. It's overwhelming. It's not safe. I don't have the tools to process this. I still don't have the tools to process it until you do, until you learn. And so that's
Hmm.
what I'm teaching. I am helping people cultivate that within themselves so that when they do experience something uncomfortable, they know how to move through it. They know not only how to move through it, but how to use that. That becomes like the raw material. That becomes the compost. It's
Mm.
tantric. It's like, let's use what is available now for our evolution.
Let's use this to grow.
Exactly.
Beautiful, beautiful. Are most of your clients coming to you for weight loss?
Yeah, kind of. Like, I mean, I'm pretty specific in my messaging. So it's like a dysfunctional relationship with food, wanting freedom from that. So not all of my clients carry excess weight. Many of them do, but not all. And so it's like they want freedom.
Yeah.
They want freedom. They want to be able to like feel sexy in their body and free around food and free to live their lives, to go on the vacation, to be in a bathing suit, to like to go to a party, like whatever it is, they're seeking freedom from this self inflicted pain.
And that's how it should be. You know, you should be able to go around and go to a party and hang out
Yeah.
and do whatever you want and not have stress about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so many of us carry all that old stuff that is like it is so possible to find your way out of that. Like I'm no different. I did that and I'm no different than anybody else.
Yeah. I've had in the past I've had challenges with anxiety. And during those sort of times in my life, I actually found my appetite to be extremely low.
Yeah.
I had a buddy, he was actually a former SWAT team negotiator, so he studied a
Oh,
lot of psychology. And I was talking to him about it, and he was like, "Yeah, man, that's the anxiety." Like when I was like, "Man, I have like no appetite. I'm just like not hungry." And that's what he said to me. He was like, "That's the anxiety." So I'm curious if you
yeah.
have any opinions or insight about that.
Yeah. It's like anxiety is another word for fear, and fear can manifest differently in everybody. Some people want to like soothe with over consuming food. Some people lose their appetite. It can be kind of another form of like it's not intentional, but it can be another form of like severance from the emotional experience. If you're disembodied because you're restricting, again, it doesn't sound intentional, but like yeah, it's just a manifestation of like emotional processing, if that makes
Yeah, I
sense.
see. I thought that there was like a physiological, and this is kind of like a manifesting of like a emotional thing, but I thought it was physiologically like generating more acid in my system,
Mm,
and
hmm,
it just was like making me not want to take anything in. But
mm.
I don't know. I'm not a doctor.
Everybody's body is so fascinating and so unique that I'm
Mm,
not at all doubting that that is your experience, that you had that like acidic kind of feeling, maybe a lot of like hydrochloric acid in the gut. And you know, in my mind, because my tendency was to overeat, I would want to like quench that with food. Like when
uh-huh.
I first learned about, so when I in this ayahuasca experience, it was actually like 3 sits in a matter of 48 hours. So it was like Friday night, Saturday morning, and Saturday night. And Saturday
Whoa.
night, I know it was two in one day. It was like never again. I was green. I did not know, but like fortunately it all worked out. But the nighttime ceremony is when I found out everything, but the daytime
Mm,
ceremony was so beautiful. And then at the end, it got real squirrely and really like fragmented and weird. And like the ceremony ended, the gong rang, and it was like, whew, like I was going down into like a rabbit hole of scary, and the gong
mm,
rang, and I like kind of came out. So it was like kind of thwarted my experience in that moment, but it left me in this very uncomfortable, nauseous space. I was more nauseous than I've ever been in my whole entire life. Because really now I understand it was like all this undigested trauma, undigested, like curdly, like blah, darkness
mm.
was like coming up into my awareness. And I was so nauseous. And so leaving that ceremony was in a forest and walking back to like the retreat, like center, like hub, I went straight for the lunch line. I went straight for the lunch line because it was like food has always been the thing to make me feel better. Food will just like push
Mhm.
this down. And I
Mhm.
was so freaking nauseous. I was sitting there with a plate of food and the flies started coming to me because I could not eat. So like everybody's experience with like how stress manifests in the body as it pertains to appetite is so nuanced. But in that case, food did not work for me. I was so sick to my stomach.
Yeah, wow. Um, so we've been talking a lot about like weight loss and like
Mhm.
psychospiritual and all that stuff. I like to like actually disconnect myself a little bit from the news, so I'm a little
Same,
delayed on like pop culture stuff.
same.
But in the diet world, isn't there what's going on with like Ozempic and like what are
Mm,
there's peptides?
yeah.
What's the deal with that? What's going on? Or is this
Yeah, it's so
bad?
good.
What's happening?
Yeah, it's so good. So my perspective on this is that there's no one size fits all in medicine, period. And so I'm curious about like intentionality. If there is a clinically obese, maybe morbidly obese human who has access to Ozempic could add a decade plus to their life,
Mm,
legitimately. However, the children that are being prescribed Ozempic, that is absolutely for me unethical, tragic, because this is now something that they'll either have to take for the duration of their lives or will face massive consequences when they come out, like rebounding and endocrine dysfunction and serotonin issues. I mean, the gut is the primary source of serotonin production. 95% of serotonin is produced in the gut, which is the neurotransmitter that makes us feel happy and good. And if the gut is in a sluggish state because of this peptide, if the gut is in a distressed state, the body won't produce this necessary neuropeptide to make us feel better. And that's why suicidality is on the rise, absolutely in proportion to the exposure of Ozempic. I mean,
wow.
yeah,
How long
it's
has this been a thing? Like how long has it been out?
several years.
Hmm.
Several
Hmm.
years. I
And you,
experimented with it. I'm a guinea pig. I experimented with it in 2023, and
yeah.
I think so. What I was playing with was like I decided to be nomadic. I put all my stuff in storage. I was going to go travel. I went to do medicine work in Panama for a month with this medicine woman, and all of my like survival mechanism things were online. I was like just it was one of the hardest experiences of my life. It was so trying and challenging because I was really there for like deep transformational work. And
Hmm.
I was on this peptide at the same time. And so because I was on this peptide, the ways in which I would have been soothing if I had not been on this peptide would have looked like mass consumption of food, even just a few years ago. But because I
Wow.
was, that mechanism was totally offline. There was no food noise. There was no desire to self soothe. And it granted me this incredible opportunity of really being with my feelings. Because it's not like I didn't want to be with my feelings before. It's just that my nervous system would contract, and that was the automatic response. And so I
Hmm.
was leveraging the properties of Ozempic during this really expansive, really challenging time of my life. And because I wasn't using food, I did like some of the most deep, profound work of my experience, of my journey.
Wow.
But I noticed that as soon as I titrated back like off of the medicine, the cravings were crazy. I had massive like constipation. I had like GI distress, and the food noise was like quadrupled.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I weaned and I went very slowly, and it was like honestly felt like it took me like a year to recover from that once I got like fully off of it. And I
What
wasn't even
is
at
it?
a very high dose.
The function of it is that it just makes the gut function more slowly.
Yeah, it slows transit time. So it slows down how quick food goes from mouth to anus. It slows down metabolism. It slows down that whole process, peristalsis, like assimilation. It's just slow. So a lot of people have like constipation. They're backed up because it just gets slow. That's not the main function. It's a GLP-1, agonist. So it like plays with how much insulin is secreted in proportion to the amount of glucose in the system. It also works on a part of the brain that like quiets like the emotional craving, like the food noise, which is profound. If that could be isolated or extrapolated without all the other like ramifications, that would be freaking amazing.
Hmm.
But the carelessness in which doctors are prescribing these things because it is so profitable it's leaving people in an unfortunate situation of like needing to be on it forever. And if they come off of it, all of a sudden they've gained a ton of weight or they're craving like ravenously and like yeah, I almost did a pilot study with a doctor friend of mine because we were like interested in combining Ozempic with ketamine with my work because my
Hmm.
work just really fleshes out the psychology of eating, these behaviors around food. And if we can leverage like the decrease of the food noise while we're getting into like the dirt, the mud of it, then as they titrate like off of it, as they wean off of it, then they can keep the tools and the practices and the teachings that they have and like sustainably like wean off successfully. That's what I was able to do. I didn't rebound with my weight. I just had these GI issues and I could feel the food cravings or whatever, but I had the tools to like navigate that. And that's like, yeah, we didn't end up doing that study, but yeah, it's
I
unfortunate.
I like how your mind works though, where you're like, let's experiment, let's figure some stuff
I
out.
know. I'm a guinea pig.
So speaking of guinea pig and experimentation, as I do the podcast, every guest kind of leaves a little bit like nugget with me. And I've been thinking about like maybe doing like a book where I
Mm,
try like a whole bunch of the stuff that people recommend on the podcast,
I love that.
and then I write a book about it. So
I
that,
love
that's
that.
that's what I've been thinking about doing.
I
Um,
love that. What are you? I feel like there's a question here.
well, no, I was just kind of musing about it. I
There's so
guess
many
if
things I could tell
what
you to try.
Yeah, I was gonna say let's take it there. What would go in the book from this episode? What would I work on? Or would I just maybe like try ketamine and then write about
Ketamine and
that?
cannabis. Yeah, off the record, I would recommend that, but on the record, I would recommend, I don't know. I would be curious, like, what are you moving through in your own journey?
You know, well, one thing that's been kind of on my mind that I've been thinking about mentioning throughout this episode is I've actually dealt with migraines for my entire life.
Mm,
And like even I work with a therapist like from time to time, and she's been trying to crack it for a while because she's not convinced that it's like exclusively like
like
food.
physiological. Mm,
Yeah, like she thinks there's something kind of maybe emotional going on, but it's been my whole life. So
mm.
that would be something that I would probably want to work on.
Okay, so this is an interesting thing. I am not versed in this modality of medicine at all. I just have recently, it's come into my awareness, but I think it's fascinating. German New Medicine.
Okay.
German New Medicine is a modality of medicine that connects every single physiological symptom with an emotional wound.
Hmm.
And it's really, really interesting. And so you can look up, like, even ask ChatGPT, but I would recommend probably finding like somebody who's like an expert in this or really versed in this, maybe even having them on the show. Um, and they will be able to like bring you right to the middle of the emotional wound of like, this is a wound around like separation, for example, or like my partner, I don't know if someone in his family recently had a flare up of shingles. And so
Okay.
we were like nerding out and like, what German, according to German New Medicine, what is shingles? And it's like this this wound of like separation and like longing, like you've been separated from someone you love. Love has been taken away from you. And so it's like the body kind of like flaring up with this symptom on the skin that like is this like, yeah, activation of this wound coming back to the surface. It's fascinating.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really, really fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. I believe that like mind over matter and like something emotional or traumatic inside of you can totally give you like bumps on your skin. Like I totally
Absolutely.
like I'm
It's
100%.
psychosomatic. A hundred
Yeah.
percent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Um
I would explore
so
that.
So I will. I wrote that down. I'm excited about that. So I like how you incorporate psychedelics into your practice,
Thanks.
and it seems like a very like you're doing it in like an ethical way. Like it's totally legal. There's no question. It's all above board.
Mhm.
Why do you think that the psychedelics can help in preventing and reversing um, health issues?
Illness and
Yeah.
yeah. I love this question. 95% of our behavior is driven by the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is also where our trauma is stored. And so I think of trauma as like the puppet master controlling us on the string. And if we want foundational alterations, foundational transformation, changes in our lives, then we have to get curious about what is driving these automatic tendencies. You know, if my inclination was to eat every time I got afraid, and it's so automatic, it's so ingrained, it's on the level of the nervous system and the limbic brain. I mean, that is subconscious mind, that is automatic. And so
Hmm.
it would behoove me and other people interested in making these changes to like get curious about what's in there, what's the genesis of these patterns, like what am I really like. There's, yeah, it's all in the subconscious mind. And so psychedelics give us access to that. As you probably know, the region of the brain where the ego is stored, the default mode network, kind of goes offline, metaphorically speaking. It takes a break, it puts down the microphone, and other regions of the brain have an opportunity of communicating. And this is where, repressed memories come to the surface. This is where alterations in perspective come forth, like deep self-compassion, for example, or seeing an event from a new lens and having compassion for the other people, or these just mystical experiences. Like this is all available in these altered states of consciousness. And when the conscious mind, the ego, that self construct is running the show, it's such a limited it's such a limited perspective on ourselves, that is so unfortunate, because if we are identifying as this self construct, we don't even know who we are.
Mm.
We think we're the ones worthy of experiencing what we experienced. We think we're a match for that thing, and that is so unfortunate, because that's
Mm.
not who we are. It's just a part of us. It's a self construct.
Yeah.
So to peel away, like to peel and separate the two, the self, capital S, and this part that's in pain, this part that goes into automatic patterns that are self destructive, to create that separation, it's deep work. But psychedelics give us like just this accelerated, freaking magical like thing. It's
Yeah.
just so divine.
Beautiful. And you do you continue your own personal work with medicine?
Yeah, very reverently. I don't, I'm, my jam is integration.
Mhm.
Don't, I have not been invited to serve medicine, so I do not serve medicine. Ketamine in this context is I'm not serving it. I'm holding the space. I am deeply, I feel gifted, honestly, in the realms of integration. I can feel into a thread of an energy and I pull on that thread and the whole ball of yarn unravels. And so I take integration very seriously, both for my clients and for myself. And last time I sat in a big medicine experience was in April, and I'm gonna be sitting later in October with peyote, which is the first time I've sat with cactus. And that's, like a good stretch of time where I've had a lot of time to integrate and process. And my partner and I will sit together in medicine every like probably 4 to 6 weeks with this a beautiful medicine that is very heart opening and just allows us to like drop in and feel each other and empathize and say all the things that want to be said, and it keeps our relationship really strong and really beautiful. um,
Beautiful.
but that's not such deep dive heavy ceremony work. Yeah.
Okay. And that's just like the two of you.
Hmm.
Nice. So you have your own
Yeah.
little personal ceremony,
Yeah.
kind of check in and top up everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Not letting like resentment like linger and brew and anchor take roots, just like keeping things like, yeah, sacred.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Things are sacred. People need to remember that.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting close to the end of our time. Where can people find you if they want to know more or if they want to work with you? And is there anything that you want to leave the world with before we sign off?
Hmm. So I'm most accessible on both my website and Instagram. So my website is therootcausemethod.com, and Instagram, my handle is Jillian Acosta _RD. And wow, what wants to come through, I think, is like, your health status is more a reflection of, yeah, your relationship with self, the things that you have experienced, the decisions you've made about yourself, the way that you treat yourself, way more than like who you are, your character, yeah, your being. And so when you focus on the external and trying to change the variables, the appearance, the biomarkers, you're missing the mark, because everything is a direct reflection of the internal projected outward. And so if you're willing to do the deep work inside and really come into a beautiful space of honor with the self by healing and moving through so many of these wounds, then the manifestation of that in the physical form will match. It will be a really, really beautiful, vibrant state of health. There's no compartments.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. This is so fun.
Yeah, thanks so much and bye.